Afternoon. Welcome to our Timoney webinar this week on Navigating a Road to Recovery. My name is Ronan O'Farrell and I'm the CEO of the Timoney Leadership Institute, a not-for-profit dedicated to supporting leaders. As many of you know, we are an associate school of the IESE Business School in Barcelona, which just yesterday was ranked #1 globally for executive education for the 6th year in a row by the Financial Times, which is it's a well-deserved achievement for all the team in IESE. Congratulations to them. And we know that firsthand in Timoney from the professors who come from IESE Business School for our program, and also the leadership workshops that we do in IESE in Barcelona, in their campus there. Well, back here in the south of Ireland, we're on the threshold of a phased opening up for businesses. Over the past weekend, the government shared some guidelines, return to work safety protocols, which are a very helpful guide for businesses. It was also announced that the HSA would have powers to close non-compliant firms, so the sort of strong arm. And what lies ahead, I think it's fair to say, is far from clear. And making decisions in these times is by no means easy. Even just clouds gathering on the horizon with the latest figures from Germany, hinting at a reoccurrence. Even the disunity we're seeing within the UK. Is it stay alert or is it stay at home? So hopefully over the coming hour, we will be able to help you chart a course through this fog, as we're privileged to be joined by alumni from 3 companies in different sectors who are grappling with the same issues as you at different stages as well. Of course, I do need to say at this stage, we're at the beginning of May, it's very early days. It's very hard to know, either ourselves or the speakers, what's going to happen, what predictions this virus will bring for us. But we'll try and chart a course here. We're going to hear from a food manufacturing company in Naas that has stayed open throughout the lockdown, keeping us all fed. Thank you, Celine. And the manufacturing company in Antrim that makes trailers that closed its operation and is just reopened. And we'll also hear from a hotel owner in that hard-hit hospitality sector as he works towards reopening in July. First is to Des O'Dowd, who is the owner for the past 20 years of the Inchydoney Island Hotel and Spa in the beautiful Clonakilty, West Cork. He has direct experience for many years in the development, operation and ownership of hotels here in Ireland and in Europe. And he's also director on the board of Fulch Ireland, our National Tourism Development Authority. Des did the ALP in 2018. And then Celine Mcguire, who's group head of HR for the Queally Group, which is one of Ireland's largest privately owned agri-businesses. And it is food manufacturing facilities located across the world. More than likely, they've prepared some of the food that you've eaten in the past few weeks. And Celine is passionate about people development and the value of training. She did the ALP in 2014 and is on our management board in the Timoney Leadership Institute as well. And then finally to Enda Quinn, who is Chief Operating Officer with STC Trailers, which is the largest semi-trailer manufacturer in the UK and Ireland, and includes all kinds of trailers and tankers. So we see trundling along the roads, keeping goods moving. Congratulations are also due to Enda. He's recently been appointed Chief Operating Officer for the company, which couldn't be at a more challenging time, I imagine, from an operations point of view. So we wish you the best with that, Enda. And Enda's currently on our 2020 Advanced Leadership Program, which hopefully will help you with that new challenge. So maybe Celine, if I could go to you first. I know you've been working flat out these past few weeks or months. Maybe could you give us some background first for our attendees on what the Queally Group is and then how you've responded and adapted over these past 2 months?
Thank you, Ronan, and it's a pleasure to be here with you. So the Queally Group, as you rightly said, is in the agri-food sector, in operating both to retailers and to the food service industry. So some of our businesses have been shooting for the stars particularly in those supplying into the retail sector, and those that are manufacturing into the food service industry have obviously been very badly hit. We have been dealing with this since obviously early February. We have sites in the UK, we have sites all over Ireland, and then we have sites in South Africa as well, which came a little later. We had to react very, very quickly because we knew that we would be one of those essential services that would have to stay open. And I suppose to that end, it was quite a relief for us to read the document that was published at the weekend to see that we were ticking all the boxes. Because the NSAI and IBEC have been really good and very supportive to us in kind of being that shining light and helping us look at the things that we needed to focus on. It has been a very challenging time from the outset. You know, I don't think I've talked about anything else any day except coronavirus, much and all as I've tried. We've had to turn every single thing that HR does on its head. Every single thing that all of our training has gone virtual, our discipline and investigations continue and are all virtual. Recruitment has become virtual, and then we have had to support people working from home as well. So it's difficult because you're dealing with businesses that are challenged, and then you're dealing with the fact that you have the business and that the livelihood of the business, and then the livelihood of the employees, and then the lives of the employees as well.
Yes.
So it's a perfect storm.
And has this been evolving for you over the 2 months, or has much changed since the first time you had a look at this and started implementing things on the factory floor?
Absolutely. Yeah. We issued our first guidelines. One of the first things we did was brought together a task force to deal with this, and we issued our first guidelines on the 29th of February. And by the 29th of March, we had issued 11 different variations to those guidelines. So it has settled down a little bit. Last week saw another dramatic changes. But in between all of that, you're changing everything that you're doing in order to prepare for anything that can happen. And every day through a new curveball.
So a lot of flexibility needed there, and agility just to respond in the moment as things arise. Okay, very good. Well, Enda, could I switch to you, and maybe you could tell us a little bit about STC trailers and what your experiences at the start trying to keep the business open and eventually closing them and preparing for reopening.
Okay. Well, look, first of all, thanks very much, Ronan, for the invite. It's a privilege to be asked to speak on something like this, especially whenever the other two guests have went through the whole program and would be much more experienced in this than I would myself, having only 2 modules completed. STC trailers were founded in 1978. We, as you said, we are the leading trailer manufacturer, semi-trailers in the UK and Ireland. We employ just under 700 people through our 3 branches. We have a fabrication centre in Antrim. Our headquarters is in Toonbridge, where I'm located at, and we have a finishing centre in Mansfield in England. So we, I suppose, like most companies, this has been the biggest thing that we've been dealt with, and we've been talking about it basically every day since it kicked into place. We closed our factory on the 26th of March. We had been talking about various different measures up until that time, but eventually it got to the stage where we just had to consider the welfare of our shop floor, of all our workforce, and we just had to close. It was a bit of a tricky one in that we weren't told to close, and our owners were very adamant that we had to comply with health and safety and had to comply with our legal legislation. But we felt that we just couldn't ensure the safety of our workforce during that time, so we just had to close. So we closed on the 26th of March. We reopened last Monday, the 4th, in our Antrim Fabrication Centre and in our welding centre in Toom here, and the rest of the workforce opened in Mansfield on Monday yesterday, and here in Toom as well yesterday. So basically we are back to almost full, because because the customers aren't taking all their trailers yet. We've still kept a small amount of people on furlough, and that'll be reviewed on a week-to-week basis. As and when we need them, we'll bring them back off it. So our supply chain closed down around that time as well. Towards the end of March, our customers started basically saying they didn't want the trailers at that particular time. So there really wasn't any need for us to stay open anyway. So we couldn't make the trailers. There was the fact that the customers didn't want it, but the underlying issue for closing was the genuine concerns from the workforce.
How did you use that time when you from closing till now?
Well, when we closed, we still had a couple of contracts that we had to honour for frontline, so to speak. We had a number of trailers to build for Tesco's, and we had a number of trailers to build for carrying hospital gases. So those trailers had to be built because they were in a bit of a panic. So we spoke to a number of our workforce, and they volunteered to come in and work during that period, which was great because it felt that you were giving something back. It was a nice thing to be doing, and you were giving something back. But during those 6 weeks that we were closed, we put an awful lot of measures in place. Prior to the shutdown, we had the advantage in that because we were owned by a Chinese multinational. We kind of knew what was coming, not to the extent that it was coming, but we knew it was coming. So their slant on it was we need to ensure the health and safety of the workforce, and we need to comply with the government legislation. So during the shutdown, we were in constant communication with our workforce. We had WhatsApp groups set up with our workforce committee, who in turn were passing that on to the rest of the workforce. We asked for recommendations. We asked for any suggestions that the workforce could give to ensure that when we did reopen, that we could do so safely. We closed communal areas. Canteens were closed. We marked out all our walkways with 2-meter spaces. We had fingerprint recognition for our clocking in and outs, and we changed that to just face recognition. We pulled together a document called Forward Together, which we issued to our shop floor, but it was put together in conjunction with the employees. So we asked them for advice on every aspect of the company. So in conjunction with the workforce, with the manufacturing and IE, with the HSE, with other government publications that were going out, we pulled together this document and issued it on a workshop by workshop basis to our workforce before they returned.
Very good.
So that proved to be fairly fruitful in that there was no point in us telling or dictating what needed to be done, because the workforce themselves knew what the challenges were. So there were a number of what were previously 2-man operations, and we asked for some recommendations from that, and with the input from the guys on the shop floor, they came up with suggestions and ways of making that a 1-person or a safer way to do it with a screen or some kind of protection in between. We've put on site additional welfare facilities. With sanitizing stations now in every workshop. We relocated part of our welding workforce. We have another factory in Maherfelt, which is about 5 miles away from here, and we have relocated 30 welders back in there, which basically means we're spreading out the workforce. In manufacturing, it's a well-known phrase, you're supposed to sweat your assets, but we have sheds there at the minute where you could have 20 to 30 people in it, and we have 8 people in it. We have 12 people in another shed. So we've done everything we can to spread the thing out to ensure that the social distance in 2 meters can be adhered to. We have introduced face shields, face masks for the entire workforce, so that where the 2-meter social distancing isn't always possible for a short period that give data protection of face shields. We've also built small portable tables with perspex visors, perspex screens up between them, to almost like your shop type scenario whereby you have an extra layer of protection between the employees. We're doing temperature checks on arrival. So every member of staff that comes in is temperature checked first thing in the morning. Well, thankfully it hasn't been the case yet, but if they're above a certain temperature, well then we set them to the side, we review it again in 15 minutes, and if they're at a certain temperature, well then unfortunately we have to send them home. Right. We did a walkthrough video as well of all the measures that we have done, and we issued that to all the workforce. So the video is very useful because it's much easier to actually see it and feel it and touch it as opposed to just giving something on paper.
That's something you did as well, Celine. I think you were mentioning you've produced a video. What's the response been like to that?
The response has been amazing. We did a soft launch last week, and we're rolling it out on a more widespread basis this week. We have a poster that accompanies it, because our tagline was working together to keep everyone safe, where we've highlighted everything that we've done, and we've surrounded that with the HSE, because we use the HSE as our yardstick because they've done an amazing job. So whatever they said to do, we did. But the purpose of the video was really for the people who are at home, who are coming back in, who may feel nervous about coming back in, and certainly just to highlight to everybody and all our stakeholders and our customers just how much we've done in order to keep our people safe. So we very much took a view of what do we have control of, what do we need to do to stay calm, and what then do we need to do to stay safe.
Very good, very good. Well, Des, if I could come to you, you're in a very different situation at the moment and looking on to not being able to open. But your hotel, by the way, must have one of the most picturesque views of the beach in the country.
Thanks for the plug. Thank you. I
have great memories of the time you invited us all down your class, your ALP class, down for an overnight gathering, which you generously organised. And even then in November, it was great. But hotels like yourselves and the hospitality sector in general gets badly hit by these kind of crises. But is this really the mother of them all?
By the time we reopen at the end of July, we'll be closed 4.5 months. So there's nothing we've experienced in the last 22 years like that. We've had foot and mouth disease in 9/11, but to be fully closed for 4.5 months is extraordinary. Mm-hmm. And then when we do reopen, at the moment it's very uncertain. We're probably talking about a year or two before we get back to any kind of normality. But even with social distancing protocols and all those other things, we'll have reduced capacity. I'd say for a lot of hotels that are dependent on international travel or corporate business, they're really wiped out at the moment. Talking to hoteliers, a lot of them won't be opening in July, considering opening in September, but they're saying we're considering opening in September, but the phone isn't really ringing to say when are you going to open. So city centre hotels really badly hit. Hotels that would have focus on events or like weddings, they're all really, really decimated. And then the seasonal kind of hotels that would open in May and close again in September, early October, they're kind of saying, is it worthwhile opening if we're only going to have limited capacity and increased costs? So difficult time. And I suppose nobody really knows what the future is like either. So hard to get a picture of what, when recovery is going to start happening.
What sort of particular things in the hotel sector will you need to address to get back operating? Because it's probably one of the most difficult areas. So if people can learn from from anything, it'll be from you.
All the conversation at the moment for the last 2 weeks is probably what are the protocols? What does social distancing mean and how does it work? And people are you know, there's documents and protocols flying around there with all kinds of extremes on them, you know, whether you can let a room immediately, or do you have to wait 24 hours or 48 hours, or all those kind of things. I suppose we have the benefit that we'll be seeing how other countries are getting on. We're a little bit behind them, so we'll see what's working, what's not working. It's going to be very difficult. I could see, you know, some hotels, you know, that are on tight margins, you know, 3-star hotels. If you have this extra cost and you have this reduced capacity, they may say as well that, you know, why open a run at a loss? But the bottom line is, what is it going to take to make guests feel comfortable? So it's not going to be about a particular protocol or a particular anything. A lot of it is going to be societal. So when people decide, I'm sick of this, it's only X, you know, percent of me getting caught or whatever. It's when people get comfortable enough to say, I'm going out and I'm going to socialize to whatever extent that means, and the environment that they choose to be comfortable in. So a lot of it is, you know, we can scrub and clean and do whatever we like, but it's when people start to say, yeah, I'm comfortable to go out. And some people, you know, who have underlying conditions, or just because they're more nervous than other people, are just going to say, no, that's not for me.
Not worth it. So a lot of it is confidence at the end of the day. You'll your end of it and whatever you can do, but
yeah, of course,
general society confidence.
Yeah, I can't see any hotel, I can't see any employer not trying to provide a safe place to work or a safe place for their guests. And you know, there's no evidence of people saying, I'm going to cut corners, I'm going to take a shortcut. Everybody is, you know, being so diligent, but it doesn't really matter what you do, how much perspex you put up, or, you know, how many temperature checks you do, unless the guest or the market in large numbers decide, I'm happy to go and meet friends, or I'm happy to go for a weekend away. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. Well, just from what you've each described there, to some extent, there's a lot of work, detailed work, whether it's preparation, new processes, physical alterations, maybe even in plants, communication, training, probably going back over it again. So they're not short-term measures that will address this. They're going to need to be sustained over a longer period of time. So what do you think you'll need to do to keep that up? Because even just as Des was saying there about, you know, gaining confidence of people, they'll need to see this, you stay the course with it, your own employees and suppliers and so forth. So is it more controls or culture within the organization? Celine, maybe, would you?
Yeah, I think it's probably both, Ronan. I think the big thing, you know, everything has become almost as expensive as gold as it has been scarce. So we had the problem with the sanitizer gel. We had thought we bought enough, and then suddenly it goes into short supply. Now it's perspex, trying to get somebody to make things that are to allow people to come back into work who've been working remotely, to make sure that they can go back in and that they feel confident coming back in. Standard operating procedures are changing. We now have rolled out audits in all of our factories on coronavirus and on social distance and on maintaining social distance. They're now on dashboards, so they're very much part of the measurement of how well we are doing. Everything is yellow now, including our screensavers on our PCs, which has that message coming through in yellow again about maintaining the social distance. The culture of stopping handshaking, and we've put signs outside every office, every meeting room, even the changing rooms, about how many people are allowed into that particular area. We've put stickers on the floor in those areas to highlight how many people are allowed in. It's culturally very challenging, and it's culturally very challenging for the Irish, but it's also very culturally challenging for our businesses, which have multiple nationalities working with us, for whom this is quite bizarre behaviour as well, and You're trying to educate everybody on this new way of living.
Mm-hmm.
We actually were quite surprised that we assumed that the people that were coming back into the workplace would feel quite nervous coming back in.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, it has been the opposite. We've probably been more nervous of them coming in, and because they've been at home and they've been with their families, the 2-meter piece probably hasn't been as big a deal for them. So
Mm-hmm.
it's about educating people coming back in, reinducting, and communicating all the time. Reminding people all the time in different ways, because it's not just about posters. It has to be, you have to go at it so many different ways to try and change people's views. And while it really is until we have a vaccine, and the problem with that is we don't know when that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to assume that it's for the rest of the year, even though we don't know. And it could be the beginning of next year. We don't even want to think about that. But we've got to do everything we can to make people feel that they're as safe coming into work as they would be in their own homes.
Very good. Very good. Yeah.
And when you adopt that ethos, that drives everything.
Very good. Very good. And would you have anything to add to that? I mean, the engagement you've had with employees over the past month, has that helped form a culture?
Yeah, I think it has. And I think the fact that for the last 6 weeks, while our challenge has been different to Celine, who has remained open, our workers have, I suppose, adapted to society, and the fact that they have to queue everywhere now to go into shops. They have to comply with 2-meter social distancing wherever they go now. So there has been an acceptance towards that. And actually, just this morning, I wanted to wait until the first day of work was over. So I went around the entire workforce today in small groups, totally social distance, I may add, and spoke to them all. And I had watched a number of times yesterday and watched them leaving the factory, and I actually complimented them on how seriously they were taking it and how well they were compliant with the measures that we put in place, because we can all be very critical of our workforce and this isn't good enough and that's not good enough, but when something's done very well, I think the onus is on you to make sure that you tell them that it's done well and encourage them to keep that I suppose that culture up. Because before we shut down, there was a genuine concern, but there was I suppose there was a lack of awareness and a know-how as to how to behave around this monster. But now, with the number of weeks they've been off, they've been watching TV, they've been in society dealing with it, and I genuinely do have to say, and I did compliment them all on how compliant they were with their use of the PPE and with their social distancing measures. So it has been honestly, it has been very encouraging on behalf of our workforce as to how they've adapted to it, and that's made our job very easy, because if we had to dictate to them constantly and tell them constantly what to do, it would have made the challenge an awful lot bigger. And thankfully, they've taken to it very well, so it's made it so much easier. Very
good, very good. And Des, I know it's not live for you yet, but like you do have a very strong culture in the hotel, in just creating this friendliness and home from home, and I imagine introducing this new culture of sort of a lot of procedures and processes and so forth is, let's say, it's going to be a challenge to keep the two and harmonize them. Have you any thoughts on that?
Sure. Yeah, like I think we have a very strong culture. While things are dissipated and we're closed, it's hard to not feel that you're losing that. Probably experiences like this help to reveal character and culture and show who's, everybody can be your pal when times are good. So it's trying to reinforce that culture, but the difficulties of doing it remotely and with the difficulties of communicating when, you're not face to face with everybody every day. I think in relation to the PPE and protocols, I think, everybody's getting used to it already. They're used to it in shops. People, so what we've seen so far, nobody has any issue with it. You know, tell me what it is and we'll implement it. Just let's get on with it. But no issues with implementing it. I would probably think by the time we get to open, Ronan, people coming here don't want to see yellow signs and don't want to see distance markers on the floor. You know, that's what, you know, it's appropriate in certain circumstances, but realistically, by the time we get to the end of July, people will have that fairly ingrained into them, and they'll expect it as that the place is going to be clean and well run, and would like to be sitting having a nice meal without having yellow signs in their face telling them, you know, don't touch your nose or whatever the thing is going to be, and how to wash your hands in the bathroom.
Yeah.
I think, you know, that's my feeling at the moment. I think maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, hotels would have been buying as much of that stuff as they could, thinking that they'd have it everywhere. But realistically, I think by the time we get to the end of July, people will expect that as a given. Like, that is just, you know, it's like having running water. It'll be
it's the new norm.
Yeah. I think we may also have, I know in some countries the regulatory authorities have brought in a grading system, so that they are actually grading the COVID-19 hygiene in hotels. So you can be a 3 or 4 or 5, whatever, but I think you will have some element of maybe self-assessment, but you'll certainly have some kind of published reassurance for guests in terms of that. But having it in people's face wouldn't be how I'd like to see it.
Yeah, very good. Well, we've about 70 people on the attending at the moment, and if any of you would like to ask questions of our panel later on, please do pop them into the Q&A box at the bottom, and we'll hopefully come to those in a little while. But just imagine, of the 70 listening in, Celine, there's probably quite a few who are continuing to work from home, who will for the foreseeable future be asked to continue working that way as well. You've quite a few people still working from home.
Yeah.
There are challenges with this. We know it's working very well in many cases, but it can be challenging for the employees themselves to cope, and not just to cope, but to excel. So have you any experiences there that have been positive you can share?
We're a very traditional group, Ronan, so we wouldn't have had a lot of experience of people working from home before this crisis started. So our IT people pulled it out of the hat. You know, within 2 days, everybody was working from home with a laptop and screen and, you know, keyboard, mouse mats, whatever they needed. But for me, it was about, and that was the practical piece, and we had e-learning on how to set yourself up so that you weren't sitting on your bed or a couch, you know, because obviously our health and safety teams couldn't visit every home to make sure they were ergonomically safe to work from home. So that's kind of the practical stuff. For me, it was about the engagement piece. So we turned all of our training to virtual training. So that, and we made that accessible to everybody. So anybody, and got huge kudos for that, and very practical training, like how to have Microsoft Teams in the early days. Did we ever think we'd all need to be trained on that? We're now all experts. So lots of very pragmatic and practical training. One of the things, this fell during our appraisal system. Our appraisal system runs until the end of April. Now it's done online, but would traditionally, obviously, there would be 1, if not 2 meetings. Some of my colleagues were slagging me because they said it felt like I was repeating Brexit all over again, because every opportunity I had, I reminded everybody the end of April was still the deadline. So that allowed managers to engage with their employees, because we had 87% compliance by the end of April, which meant that managers were having those meetings, albeit virtually, with people at home, and it did allow it to work. And those that didn't meet the deadline will meet it within the next 2 weeks. So that was one practical way of making sure that there was some form of conversations with people. I suppose the other thing that we did, IBEC had suggested a couple of weeks ago a health and wellbeing day, and we converted that into a full week, and we had 2 different programs. We had one for people who were in the buildings and in the production areas and in the operations. And then we ran a separate one for people who were working from home, which focused very much on the well-being, you know, how breathing techniques, mindfulness. Our chefs did virtual sessions on healthy breakfast, healthy lunch, healthy dinners. And the response, we encouraged people to send in photographs from home about, you know, the different things that they were engaging in. And that really went down very, very well. So it's been a constant engagement with people. It's not without its challenge. Some managers have adapted better, some people managers have adapted better than others. But overall, it's been a very good experience, a lot better than I thought it would be. I think Des is right. In a crisis like this, you see who's putting their shoulder to the wheel and you see who isn't. But you know what? The people who aren't were always there anyhow, and they will always exist. So it's that presenteeism that was in the office is now just at home. So it's about managing that. But that's only a small minority. Most people have adapted well and are working very, very hard.
Very good, very good. Well, Enda, maybe if I come back to you, I know you didn't follow the approach in the UK and London from the start, and it looks like the North is going to take a different route again in the reopening. But what are your thoughts on maintaining the trust with your employees as you get back to full production? That engagement you've had so far. Will for example, the expansion that you've done into an extra warehouse to kind of give people the confidence that and the reality of social distancing, do you think that sort of measure will need to continue indefinitely, or is it a short term? You're on mute there, sorry, I'll just unmute you.
Sorry, while the virus remains, I think that we're going to have to continue with whatever element of social distancing that we have to. So we'll just look at that week by week, month by month. With regards to the trust of the workforce, as I said earlier, I just finished a conversation with the entire workforce today, and the fact that there's no negative feedback suggests to me that the trust is there. And you know, we're constantly asking them if there's anything else that they can come up with, you know, to come forward and tell us. They do the jobs, we don't, so they know exactly what measures should be put in place to keep them safe. I genuinely believe that we have the trust of the workforce. I genuinely believe that they're fully supportive, and they've seen the effort that we've put in over the last 6 weeks, and the fact that we've been totally engaging with them, and we've acted on some of their suggestions. In fact, we've acted on all of their suggestions. I think proves to them that we're taking it serious. We can see already that they're taking it serious. So I think the trust is there. I think the trust is there. Mm-hmm. We also have a number of people still working from home. So while the guidelines from day one in the country were quite, I suppose, unclear, we were never told to close. Likewise, we were never told to reopen. So it's a bit of a, I suppose, a catch-22 that we took the decision ourselves to close, and then we took the decision ourselves to reopen. And there was some, I suppose, guidelines around it, but there was no hard and fast rules as to how we go about it. We also took a leap of faith at the start that we would pay the furlough payments without being given any guarantees that we would be eligible for it. So again, that's an element of trust that we had, and we were prepared to pay our workforce, even though we weren't guaranteed to get the money back ourselves. We have a number of people work from home. Where they can work from home, they will work from home. So we have purchasing, we have engineering, we have accounts, we have a number of people still working from home. You know, we'll keep this going for as long as it's needed as well, because we want to keep as many people away from the factory as is physically possible. So if you can do your job from home, we're asking you to keep doing your job from home. We've also risk assessed basically our entire process again. So we've looked at all the risks, we've looked at all the areas where social distancing could have an impact, or anything else for that matter, could have an impact on things. And we've made some changes to our processes and on the back of that. So look, it is a challenge. We're back now fully from yesterday morning, and to be honest, it has been fairly positive. I have to say there has been no negativity from the workshop, from the employees. It's been really promising. But as I keep telling them now, you know, the health and safety culture should be there. So it shouldn't be a case of constantly having to remind people, although we will do that. But we want it to become that the social distancing and all the health and safety measures are just second nature to the people. And we have to go back now and build trailers. So we have to, you know, we have to continue with what we're here to do, basically, and that's build trailers.
Very good, very good. Well, Des, just back to you on I suppose the reality of what's happening in different parts of the country. As you mentioned earlier, in cities, city hotels are probably going to be in a very challenging place. Are you better placed being out there remote in West Cork? And
we have most of our business is traditionally Irish, and it's repeat and recommended business. It's people getting away for a break, getting a well-deserved bit of quality time together. So that's probably fitting into a kind of what people will be planning to do in August, September, October. Probably the challenge for us will be some of those hotels in Killarney that are normally full of Americans wanting to eat our lunch, but you know, that's okay. We're happy. If that was all we were dealing with, we'd be happy with that. Cork against Kerry, no problem. I'd be very confident. And they will be competing on price. They will be trying to get into a market that they're not normally in, and they will be cutting their prices. For us, we're probably going to, it's more nuanced maybe than a radical change. We're not going to be chasing after a whole new market. We're probably going to re-emphasize Irish owned and operated and put that a bit more front and center, without, you know, like there are a lot of hotels owned by, you know, butcher funds or whatever, just to try and, I think in general, people will be more conscious of supporting local, whether it's, you know, buying local food, buying, you know, supporting local retailers, whatever. So I think we'll try and, but it's not a radical change for us. It's more of a nuanced thing. So we'll be doing that. We started doing that already. But in terms of the business model, probably not a whole pile. You know, you will have, I think, you'll have city centre hotels trying to become, you know, the urban getaway or the relaxing getaway, and they'll be trying to change around. But for us, I think it probably fits with that kind of recovery planning, something to look forward to, you know, as soon as I get out of this lockdown, you know, where we're going to go, kind of a feeling. So no radical change there, not at this point anyway. Very
good. And I suppose the fact that you focused more on the quality experience, so to speak, rather than quantity, that probably plays as a strength as well for you at this stage.
Yeah, we've always had a thing of, you know, this is the brand standard, and we can't kind of suddenly dilute it because times are tough and then say, oh, well, don't worry, it'll be much nicer the next time you come because we'll have more money for service standards. You know, we've always, you know, during the downturn, the last downturn, we, you know, took a conscious effort that we would maintain standards, whereas a lot of other hotels kind of went from 5-star to 4-star to, you know, if you can stay for free if you eat your dinner kind of a thing, and that's not really, you know, it destroys a brand. It's very hard to get that back again. So the people, a lot of our business would be repeat and recommended, so they expect a certain thing. If they come and it's something different, even though it's cheaper, then what was, you know, why did we spend all that money over the years building up a brand? Yeah. So we're going to stick with that. It's, you know, maybe not you know, there's an investment in the short term. There's an investment in downtimes like this to maintain those standards, and you get the benefit of it then when things pick up a bit.
Given your comments on sort of consumer sentiment and confidence earlier, and the fact that this is probably what people want in the short term, do you think more broadly in the hospitality sector there is going to be that shift more towards quality, boutique, that rather than the quantity budget approach?
Well, to be fair, there's always going to be people who want to get away for a weekend and, you know, won't be able to afford a 5-star, won't be able to afford boutique. So there's always a space for a 3-star if it's, you know, particularly if it's done well. But I think there's always a space for different price points. I suppose we would be hoping that there would be we would be mining a rich seam there, that there would be more in the next couple of years of Irish people looking for that quality experience. And the experience thing is an important part of it. It's the it's not just the hotel in isolation, it's the stuff that goes on around it, the outdoor activities, the walks, the environment, the local towns, the pubs, the restaurants, the little local shops and bookshops. So it's all those kind of quality parts of the package that come in together. So, you know, if you're going to Dublin for a big match or for a concert, you probably also want to have, you know, go to a pub or go down Grafton Street or go to Dooley's or whatever the thing would be. So it's the entire package, and hopefully, you know, we'll have it down here. But a lot of, you know, there's a lot of good small hotels around the rural Ireland that will get some bit of benefit out of it.
Very good, very good. Well, before we go to questions, if I could just shift the discussion a little bit to the support that has been there for businesses in different sectors to get back fully operational. Celine, do you think there's enough support out there from different industry bodies, the state? What would be top of your list at the moment for help that you think businesses should get?
Yeah, I think what the state have done is really good. I think the revenue support, the wage subsidy scheme is good. It's buyer beware. It's about 40% of your pay, your total pay. It's not all of it. I think the piece that we would be missing is the capital support. There is no capital support for all this extra expenditure. You know, so we are, you know, in terms of the signage and even the making, you know, lots of changes that have to be done to office setup, the extra laptops that have, you know, 70 or 80 or 100 laptops that had to be purchased that weren't in budgets. So there's nothing there for that. And that bill is just increasing because now we're looking at infrared temperature checking systems and they're not cheap. So there's definitely a requirement for capital support. And I think one of the big areas, and imagine, Des, you'd probably be of the same mind as this, and as the economy reboots. So we know that people have been at home and they've been baking bread, and there's been a shortage of eggs and mace and mind flour. But, you know, as things just relax a bit, it is quite possible that consumer preferences will change. Access to the data, to the relevant data on that and the relevant market data on that is traditionally very expensive. And there needs to be some state support to get access to that market data, because even if you were to purchase it today, it's likely it's out of date next week. So if we had two things on our wish list, it would be that. It would be support for what we're spending in terms of outgoings and keeping people safe, and market data in order to help our businesses recover.
Good. Enda, what would you add to that?
Well, I suppose I'd be different from the other three members of the panel here today. Our furlough scheme was I suppose, very desirable for the employees. It paid them 80% of their pay, which meant that basically with all of the other potential savings that they had with opportunity for mortgage deferrals, the fact that the chances are childcare payments weren't needed anymore, there was no travel payments. The only thing is food payments would have been through the roof. I know in our own house there's 5 children in our house, and the food bill is just gone through the roof over the last number of weeks. But from the state point of view, I suppose the PAYE and the VAT deferral has been useful to us. But because we're deemed to be a larger company, we weren't eligible for any of the loans. More recently, we're now eligible for a loan, for a bank loan. Or sorry, we're now eligible for a bank loan. The biggest challenge we would have at the minute is going to be, and it's going to be in the next number of weeks, is cash flow. And the fact that we haven't been producing for the last 6 or 7 weeks means that we have no money set to come in. Our customers are really struggling. Obviously, the haulage industry has been depleted badly. So they're struggling. We're not getting as much money in as we would like.
Yeah.
But our suppliers still need paid. Now, in fairness, I do have to compliment our suppliers in that they're working very well with us and giving us extended payment terms. But cash is cash management at the minute. It's done on a daily basis, and it's the biggest challenge that we have.
Challenge. Very good. Yeah.
But as far as the state goes, it has been reasonably. In the north here, it's been reasonably good for us, I suppose.
Des, would you add anything to that?
Closing is fairly simple. You just close everything down. We paid off a lot of small local suppliers, and came to arrangements with big food suppliers. But then when you start to reopen, you reopen a bit. Do you pay them everything that you due? You know, how does that? So that reopening is going to be very complicated. So we won't have full capacity on the sales side, but we have overhanging creditors coming in on the other side. I remember in the recession when the banks were faffing around for a good couple of years until David Duffy came into AIB and gave them clear direction. It was, you know, an amazing case study in culture and change, and he revolutionized what happened in AIB. You know, just huge change in mindset, and we haven't seen. I don't think we've seen that leadership from the banks yet. I think they're still scratching their heads a little bit. That'd be my opinion. I don't know who's in charge of AIB, but you know, they were big personalities in charge of banks back in 2010, 2012, 2013, and it made a big difference. I think we are missing a bit of leadership from the banks. You know, I think they're saying that they're giving 3-month moratoriums and they can't do any more than that because of ECB. But then in Germany, they're giving 12-month and 15-month moratoriums, and they're in the same under the same regimes as we are. So either they're, you know, not telling the truth, or they're not trying hard enough, or they just, you know, can find a reason to not do it. Yeah. So lack of leadership, I think, and the finance side is missing here. Okay.
Well, that's something that can be addressed clearly. I think all of those issues. Well, we'll go to some questions. If we could start, we're going to take one live from Sean. Kane. So hopefully this will work.
Hopefully it does. Do you hear me, Ronan?
Yes, we hear you well. Thanks, Sean.
Oh, good. Listen, first of all, thank you very much for 3 fantastic panelists, Celine, Enda, and Des, and thank you very much for telling your stories with such clarity and such honesty. Very interesting. I suppose the question I have really is for Des, who, as he said himself, is still closed, and unfortunately that, Des, your sector has just suffered enormously, like never before, as you quite rightly said. But you said something very striking, and you said, look, people need to feel comfortable again before they go out, and when they start feeling comfortable, they will go out again. And I suppose what I was thinking as you were saying that was, is there any sort of strategic plan or thinking either from yourselves at Inchydoney or from the hospitality sector as to how you might be able to increase people's confidence and get them to re-establish trust again, that it would be safe to go out and stay in hotels and eat in the restaurants, etc., etc.? And is there anything you might learn from maybe the health sector in doing that?
Hi, Sean. Well, over the weekend, we sent an email to guests telling them what steps we're taking and what we're doing. You know, telling them that it's early days in terms of detail of the protocols, but trying to provide some reassurance that, you know, we're looking at it, we're focusing on it, and we'll do it to, you know, whatever the best benchmark is. But, you know, realistically, and people talk about this is only really going to be over when there's a vaccine. It's really only going to be over, in my opinion, when people decide it's over. And, you know, because there will be people who won't be happy with a vaccine. There will be countries that do have the vaccine and countries that don't have the vaccine, and there will be probably more than one vaccine. So it's really going to be over when people decide that they've had enough of it, you know, either because they're comfortable with the medical, or they're comfortable with taking their chances, or they're comfortable with whatever. But it's very, very difficult for, you know, that'll just be something that we can't control. So we're working to provide reassurance and communication with guests. Like I said, I don't think we want to be overtly doing it while people are in the hotel, but we certainly want to be providing that reassurance to them. I don't think, and I've heard lots of different forums talking about, oh, you know, we'll be the best at doing hygiene, so that'll be our competitive advantage. I can't see anybody managing to use hygiene as a competitive advantage. So as a strategic thing, I can't see it being, you know, because everybody's going to be doing it. So I can't see it being something you can do strategically. I think it's something that you just have to take it as, you know, you've done whatever you can, and the guests will expect at least that.
Very good, very good. And maybe if we could take a question then from John Kerry, who I think is on the line as well.
I hope I'm on the line.
You're on the line, John.
Okay, so again, similar to what John said, I think thanks Celine and Des for sharing. I mean, we get an insight into manufacturing, production, and hospitality. So I think that's very useful for the call. Obviously, it's a huge time of change, and you know, we're moving into different reality than we had 2-3 months ago. So I suppose briefly, my question would be, what in any time of great change, there's also risks and there's fears and so on, but there's also opportunities. What would each of you see as the opportunities that may come from this whole experience?
Celine, do you want to jump in on that?
Thanks, Ronan. Thanks, John. Great question. The opportunity, I think, is certainly on the people piece and the engagement piece, and you know, it's probably the largest people crisis that I would ever have dreamed would ever have happened. But with that crisis has come the opportunity to fully engage with our businesses who are fully engaged with us, but also with businesses maybe that haven't been before, that are part of the group, and to reach out to people to support and help in whatever way we can. The overwhelming piece for me is probably the balance at home and in work, and the opportunity that has brought, because while at work it's been really hectic and really hard and really heavy, I couldn't have done that without the support that I had at home. And my husband was able to work from home and just said, you know, just go and do whatever you have to do. But we have a Leaving Cert student, he's our oldest, so I was going home, no matter what Eamon was doing with Owen during the day. When I was going home, Owen was, Mum, I need you, I need to talk to you, and that brought a whole new, you know, he wasn't really interested in anything that was happening at work. He just wanted to know what was happening with his Leaving Cert, and what was happening with his day. So that has brought, for us, for our family, it's really gelled us so much closer together through this whole crisis, because we've just had to rely on each other. And my team have been, every day, I said at the start of this, you don't have to come in, you can stay at work at home, you're equipped to work from home. And every single day they just rocked in. Every morning I came in and they were there saying, while you're here, we're here. So it brings that closeness, John, that bond, that can-do attitude, that flexible and just get it done, which is very much part of the Queally Group ethos, but has cemented throughout this.
Great. Thank you, Celine, for that. That's a great answer. I'm afraid I'm going to have to leave it there as we've actually reached our time. But thank you all for your honest and very insightful comments in sharing those with us this afternoon. And also to the attendees who posed questions. And I'm sorry we didn't get to all of them, but hopefully we'll have another chance again. So we'll be back again next week. Please do continue to give us your feedback. And if you missed out on some of our earlier webinars, you'll find them all on our Timoney website and also on our YouTube channel. And in the meantime, stay safe and stay the course and have a great week. And thank you very much for joining us.